And this morning, we continue our discussion involving Amendment 1 and the role partisan politics have played in recent school board races. We have two experts who know firsthand about this. We are joined by Myosha Powell, a former Hillsborough school board candidate who was endorsed by Governor DeSantis but defeated in the recent primary. Also joining us is Katie Blaxberg, who you see here, who is running for the District 5 seat on the Pinellas County School Board. She is a moderate Republican who is not endorsed by Governor DeSantis. Now, I should note, we sent an invitation to your opponent but never heard back. So, Myosha, we begin with you. You support Amendment 1. Why so?
So I support Amendment 1 because we've had the change from partisan to nonpartisan back in 1998. We've seen 26 years of it being nonpartisan, but it's been under Democratic control. More or less, our school boards, especially in Hillsborough County, have been under Democratic control. So with that being said, when you look at the quality of our schools now and in the schooling, I think parents are concerned that, unfortunately, if they put their kids in school right now, they're worried about the ideologies that they'll be taught. That is a huge concern that parents have. They're concerned because right now in Hillsborough County, even though we're graduating students at a rate of 90%, almost half, even more, approximately half do not read at grade level. There are huge concerns that they have, and they want to make sure that they're not being indoctrinated or they're inundated with ideas and concepts that undermine what they're being taught at home. And I don't think that's an issue. That shouldn't be an issue. So most people do want to know the affiliations of the candidates that are running for that office. And
Katie, you don't support Amendment 1, and why is that?
I think originally I sort of understood the amendment in a way that, you know, when I campaign, people do ask what party I'm affiliated with. However, as I spoke with voters and really dug into my campaign more, I realized how problematic this can be. Our schools and school board races, especially in the last couple of years, have been so politically divided and so partisan that it really creates an issue when there is an R or a D behind someone's name on the ballot. Again, an R or a D isn't indicative of someone's qualifications for office. And in my case, in my race, both of us are Republicans. However, we couldn't be more different in our policies and our ideologies. I think my opponent represents a more far-right extreme, where I am more moderate. So I think the issue, when you look at it as far as making school boards partisan, it takes away also the ability for voters to really get to know and understand their the people that they want to vote for, depending on their ideology. It gives the voters a chance to ask questions, to really understand the candidates and their platform.
And I want you to listen to this really quickly, and we'll get to more of this discussion. Republican State Senator Joe Gruters, who represents Sarasota and Manatee counties, sponsored the joint measure in his chamber that got Amendment 1 on the ballot. Here's what he had to say.
The most partisan races in any community are the school board races themselves. And there was no set of races we focused more time and energy on than the school board races. And it's because the other side does the same thing, the Democrats. And so what happens is we spend all of our time and effort, specifically in the primaries, trying to educate voters and letting them know which candidates are Republicans, which candidates are Democrats.
And Katie, the senator used to chair the Republican Party in Sarasota. So my question to you, is it too late to avoid partisanship in these races?
I don't think it's too late at all. I think the majority of parents and teachers that I've spoken to are so tired of the partisan politics. Our job as school board members is to educate our kids, to make sure our teachers are well paid and have good working conditions. That's not a partisan issue. We can all agree that we want happy, healthy, well-educated children, and we want teachers that are paid well, that are, you know, satisfied with their working conditions. And again, that's not a partisan issue. So again, people are tired of
Can
it.
I just jump in here? Because part of the issue right now, even though we have the nonpartisan banner right now as you run as a candidate, it's very clear that our school boards are partisan, very clearly so. They all lean, or not say all, but the majority of them do lean left. And so the problem that many people have, because as I was knocking doors and as I was talking to parents and teachers alike, the issues that they recognize do strongly lean to the left. So to now delineate or be able to do that on your ballot shouldn't be an issue when, quite frankly, I think it's very obvious. They've not hidden anything. They've not been partial at all in their decision making and some of the things that they've instituted and even the things that they've been allowed to foster. So I think there's a lot of people who would rather see the R or the D because, unfortunately, for what it's worth, and it's unfortunate on either side, either side has now been branded and branded themselves.
And Myosha, what about NPA voters? What should they do?
Sure. So nobody wants to leave NPA voters out. I'm one of the people who have had different party affiliations in my past. I think I had to change when I moved down here, I did not know it was a closed primary state. So I had to change my party affiliation so I could be able to participate in a primary. It took minutes. All I had to do was call the SOE, let them know, and that was it. They sent me a card and let me and updated my affiliation. So nobody's going to be left out. 4 million voters will not be left out. They'll still be able to participate in voting in the school board. We want them to. We really do. So that's not going to be an issue, none whatsoever.
I think it is an issue because a person that wants to run for office that maybe doesn't affiliate with one party or the other has that option now to be NPA. And the board itself should be nonpartisan. The board is a collaborative effort, a collaborative group effort that is supposed to be indicative of the entire county that it serves. Pinellas in general is very diverse. You know, R's and D's and MPAs and everything in between, far right, far left. And the board itself should be indicative of that and be able to serve all of those students and families.
So what I would say to that, unfortunately, is a falsehood because the boards don't actually do that. Having gone to the school board meetings routinely, being on that other side of that dais, there is absolutely decisions made, ideas and ideologies that you're facing, and so you're dismissed. In terms of MPAs running and then now having to choose a side, that is so rare. That is so rare. There's rarely a candidate that is actually running as an MPA. It does happen, but that's the exception and not the rule.
We have 2 incumbents in Pinellas that just ran for re-election that are MPAs.
Sure, and that's the exception and not the rule.
And both of you guys are Republicans, so simply putting an R on the ballot next to your names, because both of you differ on a lot of issues, but yet you're Republicans. So just putting an R next to your name, is that enough to know where you stand?
No,
I think it helps. I think it, at the very least, identifies a foundation to work from. Yes, we might be different in certain things, which is fair, but I think it identifies a foundation of where we stand. Because, I mean, to be honest, depending on your party affiliation, there's some things that you might readily identify. Not all, not necessarily, but I would think yes.
I disagree. I mean, I think I gave the example earlier, and we can see it here. I think when there is a nonpartisan race, there is no indication what party that person is affiliated with. It then gives the voters a chance to educate themselves and to ask questions. We all have websites. I, regularly hand out my phone number so that when people have an issue and they want to know where I stand on that, and perhaps their vote is, weighing on my answer, they're able to reach me to ask the question and to determine from there who they're going to vote for.
And really quickly, how do you feel about Governor DeSantis getting involved in these races? And do you want his endorsement?
I am very proud to have the endorsement of some local leaders in our county, leaders that spend their day-to-day lives in our county, know the issues, have sat down with me and have endorsed me, including, Senator Hooper, Senator Roussan, again, both sides of the aisle, our sheriff, people that, again, live, work, understand our community issues and have decided to endorse me.
And I think I understand why he does get involved. I mean, to be honest, if you reduce him down to the most basic form, he is a parent. And most people are concerned with what the schools are teaching children, period. It's unfortunate right now that at least in Hillsborough County, we're graduating students at a rate of, like I said before, 90% half can't read. These are our next, or read at grade level. These are the people who are we're going to turn over the reins to. These are going to be the people who serve us next and are supposed to take us into the future, hopefully being leaders of industry, and yet they're already struggling. So the idea that as a parent, just looking at just reducing him down to the basic form, I understand why he would be concerned. He doesn't want someone to teach his child something, or his children something other than what he's teaching at home, and that's a lot of what the parents on the ground feel like.
And thank you so much, Myosha, Katie, for being here with this discussion. We'll be right back after this.